Crazy to think Super Mario Odyssey is already almost 7 years old. With the eyes on the Switch 2 coming ever closer, and undoubtedly a new Mario game to go along with it, I thought it'd be fun to take a look back at Mario Odyssey and the many new locales it introduced to the Mario series. While I'm sure we're all familiar with them by now, there are still many small details, interesting inspirations, and bits of world building that have flown under the radar. And that's a shame, because this game has so much love, effort and depth poured into its world, something that's not always a given in the Mario series. Let's rev up the Odyssey and take a look. We're gonna start with the first kingdom of the game, home of Cappy, Tiara and the rest of the Bonitors, the Cap Kingdom. Although you quickly find out there's nothing to be scared of, this place has an eerie vibe to start off the game, with banks of fog breaking up the gloomy atmosphere. The Super Mario Odyssey art book reveals this was 100% intentional, as the developers wanted players to feel a little strange and unsure when beginning their adventure. The dark coloration of the kingdom also helps the massive, intimidating moon stand out even more, further adding to the slightly unsettling vibe of the kingdom. But as soon as Mario links up with Cappy and enters Bonneton, things lighten up a little. Surely you noticed the architecture of the town is meant to resemble top hats, but I'd forgive you for missing the bridge across to get there, called Glasses Bridge, is designed to resemble glasses when reflected in the water. Obvious fashion inspirations aside, Cap Kingdom also takes a lot from the Victorian English style, with the city of London being touted as a huge influence. This becomes even more clear when looking at concept art for the kingdom, which shows a more modern styled English building and tower, possibly based on Big Ben. The tower does have a hat on, but it pales in comparison to the final version of Top Hat Tower, where the hat is basically the only defining feature. The same can be said of the homes of the Bonitors, which also function as flying ships as we see occasionally in-game, but most prominently with the Odyssey, which Cappy describes as an older version of the same ships. In between the homes of the citizens, we can find these characteristic street lights, the design of which combines the classic Victorian England style with the look of hat stands. Further European inspiration also shines through when looking at the Bonitors themselves. They are described as courtiers, and speak with British English expressions, and while the males resemble the aforementioned top hats, female residents look like cloche hats. These hats originate from France, and were popular with women in the 1920s. Just like many other hats, cloche hats are made of felt, a textile comprised of many different kinds of fibers, which served as the inspiration behind the lawn-like ground in the Cap Kingdom. After Mario climbs a tower that serves as the kingdom's most recognizable landmark and defeats Topper, he obtains access to the Cascade Kingdom, our next destination. Despite being referred to as a kingdom, we never find out who actually rules this part of Mario's world or who resides in it even. The only thing resembling society to be found here is the Odyssey itself, which is explained by saying it's been left behind by globe-trotting Bonitors. Of course, the most striking sight of the Cascade Kingdom are its monumental waterfalls and the presence of dinosaurs, resulting in the name Fossil Falls for the area we get to explore. The way the waterfalls line up, as is really only seen in the background of the kingdom, reveal its inspirations to be Iguazu Falls, which lies between Argentina and Brazil. That was never the home of the Triceratops, the dinosaur whose enormous skeletal remains stand proudly atop Fossil Falls. They only lived in North America, and what we now know as the states of Colorado, Indiana and Wyoming. While this specific Triceratops must have died out a long time ago to become so ingrained with the scenery, members of the Tyrannosaurus rex species can be found alive and well. T-Rex did actually exist at the same time in the same location as Triceratops, leading to their inclusions together being surprisingly historically accurate. Concept art of the game reveals that T-Rexes would have originally been wearing top hats, something they made the right decision to change, I think. This same art also reveals the possible inclusions of pterosaurs flying through the air. Assuming these are meant to be the most iconic species, pterodactyls, they would have thrown a bit of a wrench into the so far historically accurate depiction of the dinosaurs, as pterodactyls were found in what we now call Europe during an entirely different time period. Other artwork also shows an unidentified species of sauropods, which are those enormous dinosaurs with the long necks. As explained by the game's director Kento Motokura, Super Mario World also served as an inspiration for Fossil Falls. Seeing as that game was set on Dinosaur Island, that makes sense. It's also definitely not a coincidence this kingdom has the first appearance of a 2D section. Seeing as how it fully revolves around history, it's only right that covers Mario's history as well. Next up, Mario's journey takes him to the Sand Kingdom, a land which combines a ton of influences together. The first is immediately seen when first arriving, as Mario will usually first find his way to Tostarena town. This place is strongly inspired by Mexico, which director Kento Motakura visited on holiday and fell in love with. The town residents, the Tostarenans, showcases even more by rocking the traditional Mexican sombreros, maracas and ponchos, as well as having designs based on the skull-shaped figures made for Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead. This is a holiday that takes place around October or November, where people reminisce over close ones they've lost, albeit with a humorous tone to it. The often seen depictions of skulls at these events dates back to the early 1900s, when artist José Guadalupe Posada created a piece known as La Calavera Catrina, which has since become an icon of the Mexican identity. The Mexican influence on Tostarena town also shows clearly in the colorful architecture, as well as the name, which combines the Spanish words for toasted and sand together, tostado and arena. The design philosophy behind the buildings in town is also based on the larger location of the desert, as the linear shapes are meant to contrast with the curved dunes. If we follow the sand out of town, we come to head for the biggest landmark of the kingdom, the inverted pyramid. Of course, the pyramid as well as the general aesthetics of the desert are based on Egypt, with that also being the origin of the Sphinx that can be found in several kingdoms. This character is modeled after the Great Sphinx of Giza, which stands on the banks of the Nile, not far from the pyramids of Giza. Interestingly enough though, those pyramids are probably not the inspiration behind the inverted pyramid of the Sand Kingdom, the design of which resembles the temples of Chichen Itza, Maya-built landmarks found in Colombia. The origins of the boss found in the temple, Naklotec, lie not far from there, in the Olmec colossal heads of Mesoamerica. Naklotec is described as a guardian deity of the Sand Kingdom, which is further supported by his likeness appearing on the walls of the Tostarena ruins, the inverted pyramid, and other structures. Naklotec was also responsible for all the ice invading the Sunny Kingdom, which originates from deep underground. This storyline was possibly inspired by the fact deserts can become incredibly cold during the night, thanks to the dry air not holding on to the heat. Further inspirations from ancient civilizations can be seen with the Moais that reside in the Sand Kingdom. They are a very on-the-nose reference to the Moai statues of Easter Island, which is located in Polynesia in the Pacific Ocean. These statues previously formed the inspiration behind the Toko Toko, an enemy from Super Mario Land. This game served as an inspiration for the Sand Kingdom, with it being entirely set in the desert region of Sarasa Land, Princess Daisy's home. Concept art also depicts a boss from that game, King Totomesu, was possibly going to take on the role that eventually went to the Sphinx. One more creature with design inspirations from ancient Central America is the Jaxi, the cat-like beings Mario can use as a taxi throughout the desert. Many civilizations back then had deities based on jaguars, which, together with a sphinx, could combine into the look of the Jaxi. This is further corroborated by early designs of the creature. Another possible origin lies in Japan, with the Koma Inu, lion-like statues that can be found in front of temples and shrines. You may have seen them in other media, tales of them coming alive are quite common in Japanese folklore. Another piece of concept art shows a Jaxi-like creature kept as a pet by a small human, which is undoubtedly inspired by the main character of Doki Doki Panic, the game that ended up becoming Super Mario Bros. 2 in the West. So, all in all, I think it's fair to say that the Sand Kingdom throws a ton of different inspirations from all over the world together, but the core design philosophy does seem to be grounded mostly on modern Mexico and ancient Mesoamerica. Our next destination is once again an amalgamation of different real-life inspirations, being the Lake Kingdom and its European origins. Hidden under the crystal clear water of Lake Lamode is the main plaza where the kingdom's inhabitants, the Log Ladies, live. Their livelihoods are based around fashion and clothing design, the peak of which is the Log Lady dress, which serves as the wedding dress in Bowser's Dreams. As is better seen in concept art, the underwater plaza, especially with the rays of light shining down, are meant to resemble the dress itself, although this is difficult to spot in-game. The focus on fashion, as well as the name of the area, take inspiration from France, historically the most important country in fashion, at least in the Western world. La mode is derived from the phrase à la mode, which means something akin to stylish. Despite their haute couture origins, the name of the Log Ladies is derived from the country I'd say is a lot less fashionable. It comes from the word lac, which is a Scottish word meaning lake. You may recognize it from Loch Ness, for example. And while you could make the connection with Dory here, the Loch Ness inspired monster that originally appeared in Super Mario 64 and returns in the Lake Kingdom, the Japanese name of the Loch ladies has nothing to do with Loch Ness whatsoever. They're called Doroshinajin, which basically means female people of Lake Lamode, an interesting name when you consider concept art shows male designs, based on mermen, were once planned. When we take another closer look at the design of the plaza where Mario can breathe, we can see the architecture of this kingdom is based on the classical look of Greece, with its imposing pillars reminiscent of the many ancient temples found in Athens and the rest of the country. Further concept art even shows underwater statues and an enemy based on Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, instantly recognizable thanks to his trident. Then we arrive at the Wooded Kingdom, which has a very interesting design where technology and nature come together. The name of the explorable area, Steam Gardens, further cements this contrast. According to the kingdom's brochure, it's completely unknown who built the giant machines found here, but the current inhabitants, the Steam Gardeners, are more than happy to use them to produce flowers. Despite the fact they're robots, the brochure makes all the more clear these creatures definitely possess emotions, as they're characterized by their openness and warm hearts, but also their fear for the deep woods and the T-Rex that resides there. Possible inspiration for the Steam Gardeners is the movie Silent Running, which was released in 1972. It takes place in a very similar setting, a greenhouse maintained by robots, the design of which resembles the Steam Gardeners. Another similarity between the movie and Steam Gardens is the presence of a geodesic dome. These domes are used for various purposes, but we can assume based on the setting that the ones in Steam Gardens are used as greenhouses. The design of the domes makes them resistant to strong winds, a necessity in certain locales. That said, in the real world, the fact that Steam Gardens is surrounded by mountains would most likely prevent high winds. The inspiration behind these mountains is difficult to pinpoint, although they do resemble the Alps in particular. If that is truly the inspiration behind it, a scrap name of the Steam Gardens may provide a hint. In the reveal trailer for the game, one of New Donk City's billboards refers to the Steam Gardens as Cogwald, a name which combines the English word cog with the German word Wald, which means forest. Another possible inspiration is the Redwood National Park in California, which houses enormous trees that resemble those found in the forest-like areas of the Wooded Kingdom. Next we're gonna make a very brief pit stop at the Cloud Kingdom, which is where Mario and Bowser first fight. The kingdom is the second smallest kingdom in the game, but this was not always intended. During development, there were plans for this to be a fully fledged kingdom, but they ended up scrapped. A possible nod to this can be found in a brochure, which discusses an ancient kingdom having existed in the clouds. Researchers discovered this thanks to the capped clouds found at Fossil Falls, prompting them to investigate the existence of the Cloud Kingdom. Not much remains from that time, although depictions of the giant arches in the Nimbus arena reveal this ancient civilization had a particular interest in the moon. It's a nice bit of lore that definitely went under the radar, I think. Oh, and should you be curious, Nimbus is the Latin word for cloud. Just like Mario, we crash down to the Lost Kingdom now, which mostly consists of the Forgotten Isle. By the way, should you be wondering why every region is called a kingdom, despite some very clearly not having a ruler or any society to speak of, the reason for that is that the inclusion of the word kingdom is added in the English localization. In Japanese, most areas are called countries instead. We can't be sure, but I suspect the reason for the name change is to align better with the Mushroom Kingdom. Anyway, we found ourselves stuck on an island, surrounded by poisonous water. This mirrors its real-life inspiration, just without the poisonous water, I hope, as the Lost Kingdom takes a lot from Southeast Asia, Indonesia and the Philippines in particular, although there's also some Madagascar sprinkled in. These origins are mostly found in its climate with high temperatures and peculiar vegetation, with these large colorful trees and dense foliage that resemble the rainforests found on, for example, Borneo and Java, Indonesian islands. Both these trees, as well as the tropical wigglers, are described in the brochure for this kingdom as something uncommon in nature, which is another characteristic of this region in our real world, rare animals and plants. Another nod to the kingdom's Indonesian origins can be heard in the use of the gamelan in the background music. A gamelan is a percussive instrument, so it consists of mostly drums and has a bit of a metallic ring to it. I'll be quiet for a second so you can enjoy the vibe. Now from the uncharted lands of the Lost Kingdom, we arrive at the urban jungle that is the Metro Kingdom. The contrast couldn't be bigger. Especially because New Donk City has been everything but forgotten, returning as a stage in Smash Ultimate as well as in Mario Golf Super Rush. Now, I expect most people watching this will notice Kingdom is based on New York, with a large amount of references to the original Donkey Kong sprinkled in. Compared to the other kingdoms in the game, New Donk City is incredibly faithful to the source material, with plenty of detailed adaptations way beyond what the other kingdoms do. From the iconic yellow taxis to New Donk City Hall being modeled after the Empire State Building, and even the correct "You're cycling the wrong way" signs. In the background of the city, we can also spot landmarks based on the Chrysler Building, Flatiron Building and the Brooklyn Bridge. Even New York's nicknames of City That Never Sleeps and Big Apple are referenced, with the brochure and a resident referring to New Donk as the City That Never Leaps and the Big Banana. Of course, the latter also ties into its history with Donkey Kong, which can also be seen with the red girders found all throughout the city and a ton of references to DK characters on road and shop signs. You've got Diddy's Mart, Tiny's Piroshkis, Squawk's Park, Candy's Cafe, as well as streets referring to Cranky, Dixie Kong, King K. Rool, Radley and Ramby, plus my favorite, Espresso Espresso. While the original Donkey Kong was released in arcades in the early 80s, the general aesthetic of the city is based around the 1930s to 40s. This is most prominent with the clothing worn by the new Donkers, fedoras and old-fashioned suits, as well as the appearance of jazz music, which was the most popular genre at the time, culminating with, of course, Pauline's rendition of Jump Up Superstar. The design of the music venue as well as the clothing of the band and Pauline takes clear inspiration from the jazz clubs from this era. While the final game showcases new Donkers as similar to humans in our world, concept art shows this was not always the plan. As we can see in this image, Mario is passed by citizens who resemble himself, indicating the proportions of the new Donkers were meant to match his. In which case, we may have seen more of them wearing crazy cap outfits, the clothing shop that appears in every kingdom. Their branch in New Donk City is described as the original, and probably a reference to Nintendo's retail store in New York. When we go up a couple of floors, we find ourselves on the rooftops of the many skyscrapers of the city. Here, you can find a swimming pool next to the town hall, where Mario could actually drown in earlier versions of the game, for example in the E3 2017 demo. In the final game, however, the water only rises up to his neck. The same cannot be said for the next destination, which is the Seaside Kingdom. Found here is a lovely beach resort known as Bub Lane, the name of which hints at the theme of this kingdom being bubbly drinks. While originally inspired by luxurious champagne, this was later made PG by calling it sparkling water, which is also what Bowser is after for his wedding. This beverage is what Bub Lane is known for, and created with a giant glass tower in the middle of the bay. It purifies the seawater and makes it perfect for consumers. The developers originally contemplated coloring the water inside the glass tower differently, with it possibly resembling lemonade or grape juice, but decided against it. The Japanese name of the kingdom, Shuashuana, also references this origin, as that's the onomatopoeia for fizzing bubbles. When Mario first arrives, a giant squid-like creature is sucking up all the sparkle water with a straw. The name of this boss is never shown in-game, but the strategy guide reveals it to be Brigadier Mollusque Lanceur III, Dauphin of Bub Lane. Mollusque Lanceur is French for mollusk launcher, while Dauphin is a nice little double entendre, as not only is it French for dolphin, it's also a title used for heirs to the former French throne. Just looking at Mollusque Lanceur's design, it's clearly supposed to be a cartoonesque representation of nobility. This is also shown through a blink and you miss it moment, with a tiny aristocratic hat he wears, but loses very early on in the boss battle. While he's purple in the final game, concept art shows he was originally red. This was possibly changed to make him resemble the Gushian more, the squid-like enemies found commonly in Bub Lane. These creatures are based on the flapjack octopus, although, shockingly, those don't have mustaches. In fact, the mouth of the real creature is located in the same place the Gushians shoot water from. French influences can also be seen in the design of the Bublanians. They are snails, which is a reference to the escargot they eat in France, with the berets they wear making it even more obvious. Put all these French origins together, and it seems like the setting of the kingdom was based on the French Riviera, also known as the Côte d'Azur. It's the coastline of South France, well known for its combination of luxurious locales with a crystal clear sea and warm temperatures. Nothing like Scotland, and yet Dory also reappears here as a salesperson for Crazy Cap, although that wasn't always planned. Concept art shows Mario diving next to a dory, which isn't wearing a hat or goggles like the other members of its species in Odyssey are. We go from tropical climates to polar temperatures as we head to the Snow Kingdom next. This area wears its real-life influence on its sleeve, as the name for the underground town Mario visits, Siberia, is a clear reference to Siberia, the cold, desolate region in the north of Russia. Further influences from this side of the world can be seen with the dolls found in the Crazy Cap store, which are based on Matryoshka dolls, as well as the dances we can see the Siberians perform. This is called the Hopak, a traditional dance that's very popular in Eastern Europe. The Siberians themselves are based on harp seals, arguably the most adorable of seals, which are found mostly in the Arctic oceans, particularly around Scandinavia. The architecture of Siberia also takes from Scandinavia, which helps add to the warm feel among the cold climate. This was intentional, as the developers wanted a strong contrast between the harsh environments when you first arrive in the Snow Kingdom and the underground town of Siberia. Several pieces of concept art reveal, however, that the town was not always beneath the ice, with some depicting it as a sort of snow castle, while another resembles a small Inuit settlement. There's also one which has a palace design with a Russian style, as opposed to Scandinavian, resembling St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow. Alongside the seal-based Siberians, the Snow Kingdom also houses penguins, as seen before in Mario 64 and the Galaxy games. These are definitely not the same species, however, as these behave more like actual birds as seen in all other kingdoms, with a design that has been made less anthropomorphic by putting the eyes on the side of the head instead of in the front. They can even fly, which real-life penguins definitely cannot. So I think it's safe to say these are meant to be taken more as a little reference rather than a true continuation of the penguin species in Mario games. The next destination on Mario's trip is the Luncheon Kingdom, which at first sight at least feels like it's much more grounded in fantasy than the other kingdoms. Just like the last kingdom, it's incredibly colorful, but special care was taken to ensure that designs wouldn't feel too samey. This was done by making the Forgotten Isle resemble a painting, with creative and delicate designs, while the Luncheon Kingdom is kept extremely simple, as can be seen with the look of the many food items found here. In fact, everything about this kingdom can be described as overly cartoony, which is a direct reaction from the developers to how realistic the Metro Kingdom felt. It's also a strong contrast to how lava levels are usually portrayed in Mario games, which is way darker and threatening. While the depiction may be a lot more bright, the real-life inspiration of this kingdom is actually quite dark, as the Roman-style architecture and focus on the active volcano makes Mount Fulbono a likely reference to the Vesuvius found in southern Italy. This volcano is best known for turning the city of Pompeii into ruins when it erupted in the year 79. While this fortunately didn't happen to Peronza Plaza at the foot of Mount Fulbono, the Fulbonans do have another problem, which is Cockatiel, the large bird that has hijacked the stew on top of the volcano. I'm just gonna assume I don't need to tell you that Fulbonans are based on forks, so instead I want to show you some early designs of Cockatiel. I personally prefer these over the final design, although I can see why they were chosen. They look a lot goofier and a lot less evil or threatening. The art book did mention the developers meant for the boss to be as cute as the rest of the kingdom, with a concept based on a stuffed animal, but end up with a design they would describe more as peculiar than cute. I definitely agree there. The final design of Cockatiel appears more deranged than adorable, I'd say. Following his adventures in the Luncheon Kingdom, Mario is once again intercepted by Bowser, who has this time brought a gigantic, realistic dragon along, leading to the fight in the Ruined Kingdom. This area has a gigantic tone switch from the rest of the game, to signify that things were getting serious. The Ruined Dragon was carefully crafted to be as realistic as possible, to make sure it contrasts heavily with what we've come to expect from dragons in the Mario series. Interestingly enough, early art does show Mario facing a dragon inspired by Chinese folklore, known as the Long. Despite this being by far the smallest kingdom of the game, it was actually one of the first fought up, as the developers knew as soon as they had settled on the idea of visiting all kinds of different kingdoms that they wanted one based on a medieval aesthetic, with a dragon as a boss. While I personally feel like the medieval influence isn't as pronounced as it could be, probably as a result of the ruined state of the kingdom, the presence of swords stuck in the ground does point towards it. The game itself doesn't actually make clear if these are supposed to be swords, stakes or nails, but the art book clearly depicts them as swords. And finally, before we move on, I just wanted you guys to see this absolutely breathtaking artwork of the ruined dragon towering over Crumbled Inn. Crazy to think this is art for a Mario game. Then we make our way to an often seen location in Mario games, Bowser's Kingdom. However, once again our expectations were toyed with, as while Bowser's castle usually resembles an European-style castle, this version of the location is based on traditional Japanese castles. Since the developers were of course very familiar with these origins, they truly went all out, with all kinds of little details and references. The art book explains Bowser built this castle specifically for his wedding to Peach, providing a reason why it looked so different. From a game design perspective, the developers took inspiration from Super Mario Galaxy and based its layout on that of Bowser stages in that game as opposed to the more open design of other kingdoms. Seeing as this is Bowser's extravagant residence, the entire area is plastered with his image. For example, the kanji found throughout the levels reads "Long live King Bowser," or Koopa as he's known in Japan. There are also these two golden statues of Bowser, seen in the brochure and in the fight against the Broodals. These two are based on the Japanese gods Fujin and Raijin, who control the wind and thunder respectively. Fujin is often depicted as carrying a bag of wind on his shoulders, just like the right Bowser, while the left statue is holding daiko drums, just like Raijin. These drums sound relatively similar to thunder, which explains the connection. There's also the castle tower, which we can get a better look at in the art book. Like many of Bowser's castles, it features his face prominently, but as concept artist Asami Inoue explains, special care was put in to make sure this entire tower would work from an architectural standpoint, as they thought Japanese players would notice if it didn't. The colors used are also based on Japanese traditions, as red and white are often seen in celebrations, while gold gives the whole thing a handcrafted feel. Despite this area not seeming like a place you want to live, unless you're Bowser himself of course, the kingdom does have citizens, in the form of the Stairface Ogre enemy. Their design is a cross between the well-known Thwomps and the Oni, the Japanese depiction of what we Westerners would call an ogre. The Stairface Ogres are made out of wood, which is why they're weak to the Pokio, the birds Mario can capture in this level. While you may think they're based on woodpeckers, their design is actually inspired by the Japanese green pheasant, although a crane-inspired design was also considered. Now, if you need a break from all the terrors found in this kingdom, you can always visit the souvenir shop, which serves as a peaceful haven. It also depicts a traditional Japanese architectural design not often seen in this kingdom, and has a statue found near it called a Jitsu. Jitsus are a thing in real life as well, although they are better known as Kisiti Garba, seeing as they hail from Buddhism. The statues often depict monks, although the capturable one in Odyssey is designed to resemble Statue Mario, a transformation that appeared in Super Mario Bros. 3. Before we leave Earth and head to the moon, there's one final detail that's very interesting, but I'm not entirely sure is even mentioned in-game. Anyway, it's said that Bowser's Kingdom's industry thrives on the production of Hanafuda cards, which is what Nintendo started out making all the way back in the 1800s. Whether Bowser will also branch out to love hotels is currently unknown. Now we get to the climax of the game, set in the Moon Kingdom, and specifically Honeyloon Ridge, which is of course a pun on honeymoon. When first visiting this location, it's kept a mystery who naturally reside here, as there appear to be no locals to speak of. However, when visiting the dark side of the moon, we come across Rabbit Ridge, which reveals it's actually the Rabbitish, the species of the Broodals and Madame Brood. In fact, the latter is apparently the leader of the Rabbitish, with the rest of the Broodals being her underlings. This concept is 100% a reference to the idea of rabbits living on the moon, which is common in Japan. The belief derives from seeing the image of a rabbit on the moon's surface. Concept art of the game does reveal that actual residents were planned on Honeyloon Ridge as well. Here, we once again see bunnies, this time surrounded by bamboo, while trying to sell Mario some mochi, which is a popular Japanese food you're all too familiar with by now if you're also a Pokemon fan. Other concepts show a real-life astronaut, undoubtedly inspired by New Donkers, as well as space Goombas near a full-on Bowser's castle, revealing this may have originally been the location for his abode. The moon is also home to the Astro Lanceur, these species of enemies that strongly resemble Mollusk Lanceur from the Seaside Kingdom. In fact, the brochure hints these may be the original forms, even suggesting all life on Mario's Earth may originate from the moon. When we look at the wedding hall itself, it's hard to point out a real-life building it's meant to resemble, but what's for certain is that it's designed in a Gothic style. And that doesn't mean it likes to shop at Hot Topic, it means it's built according to an architectural style that was popular in Europe during the Middle Ages. While I must admit I didn't recognize this myself, the art book also reveals the wedding hall's design is meant to resemble a rocket. Just like the rest of the kingdom, the wedding hall is completely white, undoubtedly meant to fit that general color scheme as it's often seen in weddings. However, the fact this final kingdom is monocolored is also meant to parallel the first kingdom of the game, the Cap Kingdom, to which the same applies. And speaking of the start of the game, we're taking a look at the final kingdom of Mario Odyssey, the Mushroom Kingdom, which also briefly appears in the intro of course. Now, this kingdom is absolutely jam-packed with references, with of course plenty originating from Super Mario 64. There's the general appearance of Peach's castle, both inside and outside, the Yoshi on the roof, and the paintings, which have the same warp capabilities as they used to have. In the castle courtyard there are also a set of chests, and when opened in the correct order, the last one will correspond to the position of the boo that holds the entrance to Big Boo's haunt. Using a painting from the Luncheon Kingdom, you can also find your way to Yoshi's house. It retains its look from Super Mario World, but apparently he has now relocated from Dinosaur Island to the Mushroom Kingdom. The Tail Tree also reappears from Super Mario 3D Land, where it served as the origin of the Super Leaf. There's also the stained glass image of Peach that appears above the balcony, which is surely based on the same image from Super Mario 64. According to the brochure, it was placed there because the Toads would end up missing her when she'd be gone again, which is just super cute. Early concept art of this kingdom reveals it was originally planned for a small town to be placed at the foot of the hill. This is possibly meant to be Toad Town, which is said to be the Mushroom Kingdom's capital, and often appears in Mario RPG games. Further art also shows the fountain in front of the castle is meant to resemble Peach's crown, although most of those details are lost because of the pure white coloration. And finally, a little tidbit only the most dedicated players would have ever seen. If you return to the Mushroom Kingdom with 999 Power Moons, a top hat appears on the top of Peach's castle. A small cutscene plays if you interact with it, before you truly have finished the game. Just like this video is now truly finished. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the many kingdoms of Mario Odyssey. If you want to hear me talk about Mario more, please consider liking this video and subscribing. And for now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.